welcome to How to Win the Lottery Season 5 Unadaptable Season Finale, Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
Back from the dead. Shred's baby.
Shred's back?
Shred's back.
How was the afterlife?
Well, rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated. I was held in a basement by Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a fellow named Gary. And,
Wait, hold on. They know each other?
Mm-hmm. And I, not without its benefits, I perfected my kickflip.
So you had some leeway. You weren't there.
Yeah.
You weren't a prisoner. I mean, you were a prisoner, but you weren't like a prisoner.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a Eileen situation. Shout out to a book earlier in this module.
No. But it had come on a lot of things.
Next week, we're going to be talking about our second state, which is very exciting. Stay tuned for that. But first,
we didn't reveal. Oh, next week's the reveal.
Next week's the reveal. And then the week after that. So we're 2 weeks in a row with an episode. Next week's the intro episode. And then the week after that, another hint, another book about meetings.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Before we get there, we have to get through the book that took me longer to read than any book I've ever read and may ever read.
I'm surprised that
That one book for the one state is going to take me longer?
Probably. There are longer books than this that are... I don't know if they're as difficult. I don't know if that one is as difficult either, because I've never read it. But I think that book's pretty hard.
Like my rough rule of thumb, and I don't know if it's always accurate. I think I mentioned it here, is basically I can do a page a minute. So even a book that Ducks Newburyport, which I covered, which is 1,000 pages, and I did some of that audiobook, I was able to get through at a pace I understood.
Yeah.
This was 2 minutes a page or more sometimes.
Right. Well, they're big pages. There's lots of words on them. Sometimes there are very few breaks for dialogue or paragraph breaks. It's a very aesthetically dense book, also with a lot of technical language. And I can read. I don't read quickly, but
you retain much better than I do.
But I read it a pretty even pace. It's I'm not like.
You can also read. You have an ability to read for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
My mind sort of starts to wander.
But with this book, I think baked right into. Do we even say what book it was?
I did in the intro. Infinite Jest.
Baked right into the text are these things that stop you dead. So some of those are endnotes, which then you have to flip to the end of the book, which you've little dog-eared the page, and then you have to find, and which mimics the bouncing back and forth of a tennis ball in a kind of cutesy way. But there's also a lot of things like acronyms and stuff like that, which every time that my eyes ran into ATHCSME, it was bam, running right into a break, it just stops right there because I have to walk through it, And I guess
And what does that stand for?
I don't know, but it's the big fans.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember what it says. It says in an endnote what they stand for, but I don't remember. But when I see it, it's you think that you could just your brain would just recognize the acronym, keep moving.
Yep.
But my brain didn't. Every time it was just ATHSCME, bam, dead stop.
ONANTAA.
Yeah. What do you think of that? By the way,
I have lots of thoughts about on North America and
okay. Well, I guess
President Gentile.
What do you think of it as a masturbation joke?
Wait.
Okay, so onanism. Okay, so Onan is the guy in the Bible that pulls out and jacks off on the floor.
Wait, what?
Okay, so in the Bible, there's a guy.
I'm with you so far. Is this Old Testament or New Testament?
I think Old Testament.
Okay. Onan, Onan.
Onan, yeah. He pulls out and he jacks off on the floor.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to get his wife pregnant or something.
Okay.
And it's a sin. It's a sin. It's a sin to spill a seed.
Oh, so it's to prove that you shouldn't do that.
So onanism, onanism is masturbation. If you say that someone is an onanist, they're a masturbator. But masturbation means a lot of things. So there's masturbatory. A lot of politics is masturbatory.
One could call this book masturbatory in many different ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't, but
you could. I wouldn't. I mean, I might. Not as a negative.
Okay. So there's it's like a pun that is right up front.
Okay.
It sort of clues you in that this book is maybe silly in ways that you wouldn't otherwise get, like how in like William Gaddis in the Recognitions, there's a character called Rectal Brown, even though like that's like a very serious book about art and like is very hard to read and dense and 1,000 pages long. There's still a character named Rectal Brown in it.
And, I mean, rectal alone, not enough. You have to also throw Brown in there too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were saying before we started recording that when we did the instructions in the campus module, I read that book. We talked about it. I said on the episode very openly, very honestly, very candidly, I felt like I missed a lot.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on in that book. Another 1,000-page book, right? And so literally the day after we recorded, which is the day that I finished that book, I started the book again and I reread it straight through.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the same thing here. And I think stuff like the Onan thing, like whatever I'm going to learn from you in the next hour, 2 hours, whatever we talk about, I'm going to apply. So it's not only going to be rereading, but I think that I think we've talked a lot on here about the values of rereading, but I think also there's so much in here.
And I think a book like this that almost makes an art of depriving the reader of context. Like there's a real value to the reread, so much that I don't think you read this book so much as you reread it. It is a book that, in order to fully wrap your head around a lot of stuff, you need to read it not once, maybe not even twice. You need to go back to it every now and then, which is asking a lot of a reader because obviously who has the time?
Yeah. Cause again, this took me 40 hours ish, maybe 30, 35, 40 hours to read, which is a lot. And also I said to you, and half jokingly, but also half seriously, it kind of ruined my last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I thought I would be able to do this at a pace that I understood. It went much slower than that. And I thought I could read more than I felt like the pressure of every day that I wasn't reading or I didn't have time to read or whatever. I think there's also something about the end, what the not a wall that I hit with this, but you talked about the endnotes, the footnotes. I guess they're endnotes because at the end, there was something I was doing because some of these chapters 15 pages, very manageable. And then the final chapter, when you do the time left, it's 5.5 hours. And I'm just okay, but it's one really long ass chapter.
It's the going back and forth between Gately and Hal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I can't do that obviously in one sitting, or I'm not going to do that in one sitting.
Yeah, but it's still broken into.
No, I know. Yeah. But you, it's hard to there's not,
right.
Unless you flip ahead and I'm reading on Kindle, it's harder to do. There's not really a logical. So I'm okay, I will read 20 pages in this sitting. And so I get 18 pages through, and then all of a sudden there's a 20-page endnote. And I'm just what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? So it's the kind of thing where, especially on the Kindle, because the percentage, I don't know, it's a thing where I'm just I feel like I was running to this, I know that I'm making progress, but it doesn't show that I'm making progress because the little percentage sign isn't going up or whatever. But
well, you're making I think a fairly good argument against the technology. The technology is fucking with your experience of reading the book.
Well, I think that you were talking about if you just turn that off, what it would be like, and that would be wild.
I was talking about that with the last book. This idea that if you, because at the bottom of Kindle there is a thing that shows you how much percentage of the book you have left, how much time you have left to read.
You can turn it off,
and you can turn all that off. So if you have a book like this, and you don't even know, let's say you're not familiar with Infinite Jest at all, you don't know that it's this 1,000-page book. You just go in, you start page 1 with no information about when there's an ending coming. This. I think that it would be a really strange experience.
It'd be wild.
This book. You would literally just keep reading and be I have no, because when this book ends, it's why does it end there?
Right. I don't have an answer for that. I'm sure you do.
Why? What's the purpose of all this? I mean, there is purpose to all of that stuff, but it feels like a non-ending in some ways, especially because the chronologically last thing to happen in the book is the very first thing that we're introduced to in the text, which you don't know until you finish the book.
And even when you finish the book, you still don't really know. You kind of do, but I don't think it's immediately obvious. If you had told me that, I don't know, or if you hadn't told me that, I don't know that I would have known.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know that people are listening to this if you haven't read this. If you are, thank you. We appreciate it. But there are also, I think, 388 endnotes. There is just a staggering amount. I don't want to use that word because that's the word associated with him. That's not why I used it. But there's.
Are you thinking of Dave Eggers?
I am thinking of Dave Eggers.
Okay.
Never mind.
I think I think there's a deep purpose to the length of those endnotes as well as the length of the chapters and the digressive nature in the book, which is that I think those digressions are entertaining, and they can be really funny and tell you all sorts of interesting things about characters, about Boston, because it is like very much a regional novel. They can tell you about the nature of addiction in a way that doesn't advance the plot in any way, but is still like thematically advancing the plot. But also what it does, having this wealth of information, is that it actually like, as far as like plot goes, it buries plot details in a way that like the importance of individual events are not immediately apparent to anything, right? It can become very difficult to discern what's important and when and why.
Because there's a lot of the footnotes are like describing what a drug is, and not like how you feel when you take it, but like literally the chemical composition.
Yeah.
There are a lot of footnotes that are describing the publisher and publication date of some text that's referenced in the book.
Yeah.
And then there are ones that are like a 20-page conversation between Hal and his brother, and just like, why is this an endnote?
Yeah.
And you can't, like, I asked you, not that I was going to, but I was like, can you skip the endnotes? And you said no.
I think that's something that everybody thinks at some point. I think everybody thinks like, well, I'm just going to skip the endnotes. And this book would be completely not understandable if you skip the endnotes.
I think it's pretty tough to understand if you read the endnotes.
Yes. Yeah. But if you don't read the endnotes, you haven't read James Incandenza's filmography. You don't have the really long conversation between Orrin and Hal about Quebec separatism. You don't have Strzok's essay on the AFR. You don't have a lot of context for the drugs themselves, which are important. But it also does this thing where it's melding different voices of like technical texts, like the DSM and things like that, with the more casual dialogue of a campus novel. Which is what the whole book does with the like harder dialogue of the meetings and things like that.
So how many times have you read this book already, including this one?
I'm not sure.
A bunch.
Well, a handful. Yeah. But like for example, like the first time that I read it,
that was going to be my next question.
I was like 18 and I skipped a lot. I didn't understand.
So you read this pretty short after it came out. Like within a handful of years.
Like 2001.
And it came out, what, 96?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's relatively, while he was still alive, right?
Yeah.
But you said you read just like the tennis stuff.
Yeah, I read it as like I was very intimidated by, especially for some reason, the Steeply Morath stuff on the mountain. I had a really hard time sort of getting through that and getting into that. And so I read the campus stuff because that's, I think, the easiest to read, the most appealing to a young reader.
I think it's also the most fun. I mean, it was the stuff that I enjoyed the most. Because I think he's also very good at describing tennis, like the actual...
Yeah, right, which we've talked about before.
Yeah.
There's like a beauty to the ability to... we did it in the art of fielding. Like that guy knows baseball.
And Delilla knows football and baseball.
Yeah. So when Wallace really goes into tennis, it's like something that he clearly loves and is very knowledgeable about, and you understand like the poetics of it. And
I'm like, he might be describing drugs in the same way, but like I don't have that kind of experience where I just don't know.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think that it is like, I think that you end up with a real sense of Wallace through this book. I mean, we know from his life that he is a guy that dealt with substance abuse issues and depression. And we know that he's a guy that was like, as a child, quite a good tennis player. So, you're dealing with like this guy, it feels like he's taking the entire wealth of knowledge that he has in the world, and like from disparate places, and sort of fitting them together to create this Voltron of a book.
Now he wrote other novels and a bunch of essays and
Short
journalistic
stories,
stuff and everything like that, but this is like the thing for him, right?
I guess so, yeah. He's got...
Have you read other novels of his?
Sure, yeah. He only has one other novel.
Oh, okay.
It's The Broom of the System.
Oh, there was one that was posthumous, right?
Yeah, an unfinished book. There's The Broom of the System, which is his first novel, which is, not great. But
How long? Is that long? Or is
it's long. It's like 700 pages or so.
Is it dense like this?
No, not in the same way. Not in a way.
Okay.
It's like a little goofier.
Okay.
There's a short story collection, Girl with Curious Hair, a short story collection, Brief Interviews with Hideous Men, short story collection, Oblivion, and then essay collection, Consider the Lobster, a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. And
is that about cruises?
Yeah.
Okay. Because past author of this show, Lauren Euler, just did one about a cruise, the Goop cruise, and she like basically, I think, seemingly modeled it after that one. Okay.
So I mean, he's got a pretty extensive, for someone that wasn't writing for all that long.
Yeah.
He's like publishing for like 20 years or so.
Well, would you say he's one of like your guys, or is this one of your favorite books? Is he one of your guys?
Yeah, and I would like, it's interesting because like this book is a book that has and like we shouldn't do like a cult of personality thing here, but like this is a book that has like ended up with a reputation on the internet, and like it's on BuzzFeed lists that are like, red flag, if a guy has this on his bookshelf, don't date him, or like men trying to like talk their girlfriends into reading David Foster Wallace, et cetera, which is like, I get it, that stuff is annoying, but it's also like that doesn't really have that much to do with the book itself.
Well, I think what's weird is like I feel like, and again, I think I'm less well-read than most people probably listening to this show, but I'm also more well-read than most people just because people don't read. But I was amazed at like in the 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it took me to read this book, as I was like talking to people about it, unless you were the guy who worked at the used bookstore that I bought a copy from to have the physical copy along with the Kindle, everyone I mentioned this to were just like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's like,
and like so it's like this monolith or whatever, like it's this like thing to like a mountain to scale in literature. And then like so many people just like, even if they're like they read probably nonfiction or whatever, they're just like, oh, I don't know.
It's like what I was saying to you about the Barbie movie when like Greta Gerwig puts in that joke about pavement, about the guy being like, oh, pavement is a post-art, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that is so like pointed from like people in Greta Gerwig's life.
Yep.
Because like, if you're a kid going to see that movie, if you're a teenager, like they have no idea who Pavement is, much less the type of guy that mansplains pavement. Like Barbie is like a movie for 40-year-olds. It's not a movie for kids. All the references in it are stuff to like things that are from when she was younger. But it's like, I don't know. It's very strange.
But we did it. Here we are. So
okay.
When I was asking you,
I liked Barbie, by the way. That wasn't a criticism.
No, Barbie's great. But when I was early on the book, first 100 or 200 pages, I was like, how would you describe this as like a campus novel? You just said it's about addiction, right? It's just like, that's just what this is.
Yeah, whether it be about drug addiction or addiction to entertainment or addiction to attention or addiction to any of the things.
Sex addiction?
Sex, yeah. So, I don't know. How do you want to go through this? It's a hard book to choose to go through.
I don't know.
We can go through it by like, do you want to talk about, we can talk about ETA, then we can talk about the Ennet House, then we can talk about...
just Ennet House. The Ennet House makes you sound like an outsider.
Yeah, right.
I want to say, before I go any further, my favorite character is the moms.
Oh, yeah, that's so weird.
Why?
Because, she's evil. She's one of the villains of the book, I think.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Why?
That's a really good question.
Because I think what sold it for me is the scene with her and Mario. Mm-hmm. She's so loving and doting, even though they have a very strange relationship, I think, overall. I also think maybe the funniest thing in the book, and it's a very specific, like you sent to a thread a screenshot of the Attorney's General thing, but about what was the joke in the comic book? It's not this joke, but it's a different thing. But there's like...
Oh, Natty's Ice.
Natty's Ice. There's a couple like grammatical things that I very much like. And I think one of the funniest things in this book is another thing that I really like is her going from supermarket to supermarket, changing 10 items or less to 10 items or fewer. I just think that's so specifically annoying, but she's right. And I thought that was just so weird and specific and funny. But why do you think she's a villain?
Because of the way that she drowns people with love, the way that she is very, very deceptive, I think, while being... like fronting it as though she's not being deceptive, while like pretending like people can be so open to her, while really they know that they have to hide things because they know that she won't put up any defenses. Like that's very much like I think he really captures something about like the way that certain moms are. Also, she's a villain. Well, she's a child molester in many and likely that she had sex with her own child, Oren. Mm-hmm. She certainly is having sex with John Wayne. I mean, I'm not here to
look. Nobody's perfect.
I'm not here to slut shame, but she's like all over in this book, right? CT, like Mario is CT's kid, likely.
Who is her not brother?
I mean, not
but
likely.
Like,
Mario is CT's kid. I think there's no
half brother, step brother.
He's called her half brother, but they go the pretty far lengths to explain that they're not related by blood.
Right. That just like some new woman, whatever.
Yeah.
So like maybe the mom shouldn't be my favorite character.
Well, no, it's fine. I mean,
I like parts of a better character.
The thing is that all that stuff is layered in such a way that it is like not immediately apparent, and you don't get that much from her. There's so much of the book where she's a presence that is distant, where like she's like hovering. I always get people give me shit for the way I pronounce that word.
That was very Quebecois.
Hovering in the like around, like Hal is always referring to her and Mario is always referring to her, and Orin is very clearly like afraid of her / like think
traumatized by her, maybe
think she's evil. She actually doesn't talk that much.
No,
there's only a couple of scenes where she's actually speaking.
The scene with her and Mario,
and the scene with her and Hal in the office when she gives him the apple.
Yeah,
and even that is like the apple is like an example of the ways in which she uses love as sort of a cudgel.
What's that mean?
A cudgel is like a shillelagh, like something you like beat someone to death with. You know, she's giving him the apple, knowing that, and he has to take it because she's so good at hiding the fact that it like is her only apple, and she's suffering for the love of her children, and her children know that she's suffering for them, but that's part of it. Like she wants them to know that she's suffering, but like part of the game is showing that she's not suffering and convincing them to take the apple anyway.
Right.
Like it's very manipulative of a child, which is like very
dark.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. Yeah.
Well, I think so. You had mentioned very early on in my reading that your favorite character is Pemulus.
Yeah.
And I was reading just like,
you don't understand why. Yeah.
I think he's cool, but I think like when you said not only is he your favorite character
in all of literature,
I'm like, I'm in for something big here.
No.
Then, like he's cool, but it's also just like he's also kind of like not like a minor character, but not. It's kind of a minor character.
No, I don't think I think he's a villain too. But what I like about him is the same thing that I like about Benji Nakamuk in the instructions. I think that there's something about like a not to be fucked with teenager who like he doesn't really fit into this school. He's like he's from Boston, first of all. Like most of the kids are not from Boston, and he's from working class Boston. He's from Alston. You get this sense that you don't get this. I mean, you know that he's coming from this hellish background of his father raping his brother while he's there. Right. There's that whole chapter about Maddie Pemulus with the fucking the boom thing. And he's like coming through that, but you don't get that sense from him. Like he's never like he never seems like a victim in any way. But he is clearly like this like menace.
He's kind of like a drug dealer. He's like
he is a
campus criminal.
He is a drug dealer, but he's like a menace in the text. Like there are kids in the text like Coyle or Keith Freer who like, or Trolsch. Like these are kind of weenies that we don't really like. We don't like these kids for various reasons. And like you get the sense that like Pemulus is really gonna fuck these kids out. Like he's gonna like when Trolsch is the one that gets him ultimately expelled because Trolsch has been taking the
Visine?
his speed. No, he's been he's been like slowly like stealing his speed and keeping it in the Seldane bottle. And then when John Wayne feels sick and he comes over to get a little bit of Seldane from Trolsch accidentally gives him the speed, and that leads to John Wayne like ranting in front of everybody, which is the thing that gets Pemulus kicked out of school because then they search his stuff and they find all of his drugs and things like that.
And also ruins John Wayne's chances in the Whataburger tournament, right? Or no?
No.
Is that something separate?
That is something separate.
Because in the first chapter, which I reread, they talk about, Hal talks about how John Wayne would have won, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Which is why. Or does that not matter? I mean, everything matters.
No, it matters. Because something happened to him, or because, right? So in that first chapter, what you have, like, you have this scene that is kind of hard to piece together.
It's at like the University of Arizona admissions office.
Yeah, but not even that. This is just within the flashback. This is like this is the part of the text that is the most confusing. There's a scene in which Hal is remembering himself, Don Gately.
Himself or himself?
No, Hal is. Yeah.
Sorry.
Hal is remembering Hal.
Okay.
Hal is remembering Hal, Gately, and John Wayne digging up James Incandenz's head. And Gately's wearing a mask and John Wayne is there.
Which we don't see that later in the book, or
No,
do we?
no, not
It's
at
only
all.
reference there.
That's the only reference.
Okay.
Between the end of Gately being in the hospital with his severe infection, fighting off.
The Canucks.
He's fighting off like drug addiction.
Yes.
Like in a serious way. Between then and the beginning of the book, where Hal is interviewing at the University of Arizona, we don't know what happens.
But something bad happens. Something weird happens.
Well, we know that he goes to dig up James and Condens's head
For some reason. Do we know why?
Yeah, because the master cartridge for the entertainment is in his head.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. There's so much of this book.
Which might be the reason why he kills himself by putting his head in a microwave.
To fry it?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work. Or maybe it does work. Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know.
Jesus Christ. That's a gnarly suicide.
Yeah, it's a reference to Sylvia Plath too, right? It's like a postmodern reference to Sylvia Plath because Sylvia Plath stuck her head in the oven.
Speaking postmodern, that's not this, but technology. I want to talk about, before I talk about the different sections, I know that like 1996, all things considered, not that long ago.
Yeah.
But also, in terms of technology, radically long ago. But there are things that he describes in this text that I was just like, holy shit. Like, where to the point where it's not even prescience, like beyond prescience, just like describing Zoom, describing avatars or whatever, describing like streaming as opposed to
Netflix.
broadcast TV.
Like Netflix in so far as like ordering the cartridges and stuff too.
Or just like having whatever you want on demand at any point, right? And it's just like, I'm sure there are other things he's describing that didn't play out, that don't stand out, but like there's at least 2 or 3 things where just like, that's spot on. Like it's not even spot, that's just what it is. Written in 96, but when does it takes place over like a 10-year sort of stretch, maybe?
I mean, the first stuff takes place in what do you mean? I mean, most of the book takes place within a year.
Okay, but there's like 10 years of like the subsidized time.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Which I took a screenshot of. There. Ooh, is this it? I found it. You're the Whopper, Tux Medicated Pad, Trial Size Dove Bar, Purdue Wonder Chicken, Whisper Quiet Maytag Dishwasher. All of that, we don't really know. You Shit You, blah, blah, blah. Dairy products from the American Heartland. I think there's maybe some of that, but it's mostly the Depend adult undergarment.
And Year of the Glad, yeah.
And Year of Glad. So, do we know when this is set time-wise or no?
Like when it's supposed to be? 2005.
Okay, so like a little in the future, but not radically in the future.
Yeah.
But it's far enough in the future.
Because when Hal is a kid and he eats the moss, it's the 90s.
Right, okay. Because there was a thing, oh boy, Gately talks about something, he references something, and I was like, okay, I have a sense of like he was born like in the late 70s, early 80s, I think, or something like that. I don't remember. There's a thing he mentions toward the end where I was like, time-wise, I can kind of clock.
Yeah, well, he grows up
watching
Cheers.
Well, I mean, you could grow up watching Cheers now,
and
right?
His oh no, that's Steepley. Steepley's dad watched the
MASH.
MASH, right?
That's a dark sequence. Yeah. I also want to talk about in terms of the prescient thing. It's not exactly what happened, but a crooner, non-politician, running on basically Make America Clean Again.
Yeah, he's a germphobe.
That whole thing is so fascinating because, like, I don't want to say it's not important. You could be like, it's not important, but it also informs everything about everything and about just dumping all garbage and toxic waste and everything and just like,
it's like it's also like doing a climate change thing, right? It's like predicting our disastrous actions resulting and America's ability to like hand those disastrous actions off so that someone else deals with the consequences always. Right.
Or just like the little things where they reference like the 49-star flag and there's an end note just like, you know, because we lost Maine. It's just like, oh, right. Maine no longer exists. It's just like, it's so weird.
Yeah, and then there's the feral hamsters and there's the plants that like grow and then the thing like sucks all the poison out of the air so that things grow like huge and then the poison comes back so they all die. So you have these like cycles of going through season. And
there are like rumors of like these like the rats or like the toddlers or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like not that he just has birth defects, but it's you know, Mario is severely deformed because he's maybe an incest baby.
No, but I don't think that's.
I think what you said before kind of confused me.
Yeah. Well, there's a very confusing line that says, "The first birth of the Incandenza's second son."
The first birth of the Incandenza's second son.
Yeah. Meaning that it's probably not. I think this is my read on it. which is that Hal is James's second son, and Mario is Avril's second son. Because Mario is Avril's kid with CT.
Okay.
And the reason why it's like feels like fairly obvious that it's CT is not only because CT in a chapter refers to Mario as possibly that thing that he fathered, but also when they describe what CT's mom looks like, sounds like she looks exactly like Mario.
She's like a dwarf or something, right?
She's with a head that's too big, and then Mario's like born like at 20 weeks or something.
It seems like she doesn't even know she's pregnant. She just like has a kid on steps or something, right?
So he's got all these things wrong with him because of all that, but maybe also because of the like mutagenic stuff
But it's just like there's like so much going on in the world that like doesn't impact the text, but also informs the world at large. Just wild to think about. Okay, by section ETA.
Yeah. How do you want to talk about ETA?
The Enfield Tennis Academy. I don't know where to begin.
So thematically it attacks this idea of addiction by like looking at this desire for celebrity stardom, like people who are hyper focused on doing one thing to become athletes, to go to the show, right? They're training them to be entertainers.
Yep.
Lamont Shue is probably the best example of this because he's like paralyzed because he wants to be famous so badly that he can't actually like
as soon as he starts doing well, he realizes he's doing well.
And he stops functioning.
Yep.
You know, these various characters that are there and want it in different ways. And some characters are a lot healthier than others. Like Teddy Schacht seems like a really healthy character. He sort of knows that he's going to be a dentist. He's like plateaued is a word that gets used a lot.
Well, assuming that his older brother doesn't drop out of the seminary or whatever, right? Is that kind? No, that's a different kid.
You thinking of Loach?
Yes.
Yeah, he's not a kid. He's a trainer.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I did love when he realized he wanted to be a trainer when he put a Band-Aid on an X-Men figure and just like, that's such a weird specific visual.
Yeah, I mean,
I also want to apologize to anybody who loves this book and hears me talking about like confusing everything, but I'm trying.
No, but anyone listening probably knows that it's like hard to talk about this book for the first time without, you know, I think this is like a version of that where it's like, we're not being too academic about it because it's hard to be terribly academic about it the first time through. It's hard to remember everything the first time through. But you've got Hal, let's focus on the Incondensa family first. You've got Hal, Mario, Oren, Avril, and James. Hal is a lexical prodigy and a very, very good tennis player. Like maybe because of his intelligence is sort of ostracized, isolated. He was clearly like a weenie as a kid that like used to wear a bow tie and stuff. That sort of grew into being someone that's like kind of cool.
But he still adjusts his bow tie before he enters the room.
And he's very like in some ways he's our protagonist.
Yep.
He's one of two characters that are like the point of view characters that I would say.
Him and Gately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we're really like following their story.
But he's the only one that writes from a first person. No,
because
boy. But
almost in the very beginning, you have
it starts in first person.
Yeah, but you also have that section with the wording, where it's like in like very sort of offensively written. This is the part that I don't like in the book.
Yeah,
it's like very poorly. It's a very, very poor like karaoke version of African American English vernacular. That's written in first person.
Okay.
And there's some other stuff that's in.
But it feels weird, and I texted you about this, when at the end it reverts to first person. Like it's just like, oh.
Yeah.
Because it's been hundreds of pages without. But Gately's isn't in first.
Also, is it in first person when I think when James's father is talking to him?
I don't know.
Yeah.
This also raises a question, and I know that we're drifting from ETA, but I asked you the other day who wrote this, basically, like in whose perspective, because like there's people, like the weird thing, it's kind of funny, but like people are, like there's a lot of like the journalistic abbreviation SIC, like sick, like as it was written or whatever, there's people writing abbreviations and there's endnotes that are defining the abbreviations. It's like you could just write it out. Like, I don't know. I rarely know who's actually like telling the story, who they're telling the story to, if the same person is endnoting, if there's some kind of like editor. Because like
I don't think it's worth getting lost and all that.
I was curious about it because like in the instructions, like it's clear, right? And like that's like it's a story of basically like a Christ-like figure. And here I was just like, because there's so many different ways that he writes, which is impressive, but it's also, I was not confused by it, but I was curious about it.
There's even at the very, very end, once we exit Hal's point of view. So you have Hal writing in first person, and then when it's clear that they are going to play the tennis exhibition game, and Barry Loach is taping up his leg,
shaving and taping. Yeah,
there is someone that says, "All of us in here." Mm-hmm. So that's clearly being narrated by an unnamed ETA kid. Right. And we don't know who it is. There's no.
I was just curious about it because like it feels not like it's going to unlock something, but it's like, oh, that could like inform.
No, it's a totally shifting perspective throughout the entire thing.
Do you like that about it, or you not care?
No, I think it's great. I think it's kaleidoscopic in a way that is very hard to structure. Frankly, like the structure of this book is a marvel. It's very like one thing that fascinates me about the structure of it is, let's say Gately is the main character. Mm-hmm. You don't have Gately's background until the end of the book.
Yep.
The end of the book does all the Gately exposition that you would normally put up front so that you learn about him and then you get all the stuff afterwards. But it does it the other way around. At the end of the book, you learn about Gately.
Although in rereading the first chapter, I think it's funny that he figures out a way to give you everything you need to know about Hal. He's just like, this guy's doing my favorite thing where he's telling me about myself so I don't have to talk. And she's like, you are Harold Incandenza. It's just like, you're 18 years old. You're a tennis prodigy. It's just like, all right, we get it. But like, it worked.
That's a real like expository trick.
But like, it kind of tracks. I also do think...
But there's weird things in that very beginning that are like indicative of very, very strange things that if you don't look up an individual name... like it'll like shoot right by you, right? So one of those things is, I think the guy's name is Ben Gabor. He says, I'm going to break the rule.
Well, you look it up because there's also there's a weird thing that we've not mentioned where in these different characters narrating the text will use the wrong word, or they'll use it might just be like completely the wrong word, or it might be a word that they think sounds like they mishear something. And sometimes it's corrected, sometimes it's not. You sort of have to like...
Yeah,
and
Randy Lenz does this a lot.
But I think like a lot of characters do it, which is, strange. I also do think in terms of the not first person, but like the close narration, one of my favorite sections was Joelle, because I feel like there's like the mystery of like, why is she in the veil? And eventually, as she's cleaning in Enid House, she's cleaning things around, she's like remembering different dinners and Thanksgivings, and then remembers the acid and whatever. Like it just... that was like her sort of, and I think that's the druggy kind of like floating around through space and time, mind drifting.
I mean, we can like approach the argument of whether or not Joelle is actually deformed.
Well, I thought for a while that she was wearing a veil to just have people
because she's lethally pretty,
right?
But
then we're probably led to believe that she was hit in the face with a vial.
We are led to believe she is hit in the face. Like it says, it refers to Orin as a dodger of acid extraordinaire. But because someone dodges acid doesn't mean that someone else got hit by acid.
Right.
I don't think it ever like explicitly states that she was hit by it.
Because her mom throws it at her dad for admitting that he was in love with her. Mm-hmm. He ducks. Orin, being the supreme athlete, he ducks.
And then maybe gets hit in the face with it. Yeah.
But also like the whole like veil thing, like there's a community of people who like wear veils and she like explains why. I'm like
the UHID.
It doesn't matter whether she is or not, but
So the thing that I was talking is Dennis Gabor, not Ben Gabor. In the very first chapter, Hal says, like, I believe that Dennis Gabor very well may be the Antichrist. Now, do you know who Dennis Gabor is?
I do not.
So Dennis Gabor is the guy that invented holographics. He invented holography.
Like holograms?
Yeah.
Okay.
Holographs.
What's the difference?
I think a holograph is like Princess Leia in...
So what's a hologram?
I don't know. But like the
like the projection of...
Okay. So the... this point being that like that is like a fundamental nature of the entertainment right? The Infinite Jest, the cartridge that Jim makes that is like lethally entertaining is partially like because there's holography in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like Hal is like, I don't know, like if you don't know who Dennis Gabor is, which I had no idea, I looked it up. And like it I don't know what it necessarily feeds
So
into.
maybe just a metatextual joke on like
well, it's not a joke. It's like he's just saying like here's a thing that's part of that cartridge, and he is the like very well maybe the Antichrist because like he created this thing that
it's like,
was used and was devastating the same way that like maybe
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, the same way that maybe like someone who, you know, first enriched uranium or whatever is.
Right. I guess, I mean, there's two, I mean, my brain went in two different ways. There's the Hamlet thing, which I don't really, because I don't know that I've ever read Hamlet. I might have read Hamlet. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, that's fine. But
your eyes are flexing in other ways.
I'm trying to see like how that would like.
Because you had an idea while we were in the middle of this season, you had an idea to like, there's a different way we could sort of structure the show where you build up to a novel like this by reading things that sort of like.
Yeah, it was Meg's idea.
Oh, shout out to the egg. Mm-hmm. Where you like we would read Hamlet and you would sort of understand like having read King Lear.
You'd read Hamlet, you'd read Oblomov, you'd read
right,
you know, any number of the texts.
But like having read King Lear, I picked up on different things in succession and like you could sort of like know whatever blah blah blah. So there's that element to it. There's also the other thing I wanted to bring up was you sent me the article that someone just recently wrote about or referenced the like dopamine, like the mice, the pure ecstasy thing that like is just in here too. Like there's just like these.
Oh yeah, I think it was the Sam Chris
things
that just the Sam Chris article about ASMR.
Yes, which I don't fully whatever, but like there's things in here that like are still topics and debate and whatever.
Yeah,
I just derailed us anyway. ETA.
No. I mean that's because Steepley and Marath have that same conversation about that exact thing. So yeah,
but you sent me that article before I got there. I'm like, yes, I know what you're talking about. And then I just like then I read the article and I'm like,
yeah.
Fuck does it have to do with anything? And then I got like 200 pages.
Well, still, you would know that it has to do with like this idea of choosing entertainment over all these other things.
I also like fundamentally disagree with the like ASMR like as evil. Not that I like it, but I'm like whatever. But I also see the point that they're making. Anyway, ETA.
Yeah. So it's this like boarding school that is incredibly hyper. Intellectual classes seem really, really difficult there. The math and everything, because Avril is like everyone there seems like a prodigy of some kind intellectually, but also at tennis or math or languages.
It feels like a boys' school, but there are girls there. But like we don't really follow the girls who are there.
We don't follow the girls who are there.
But there's like seemingly not as many because they talk about the ratios, but like there's an entire like successful girls tennis program that like we just don't really know much about unless they're on adjacent courts or whatever.
Yeah. I wonder why that is. I think there really aren't that many female characters in the novel at all. You really only have
Avril and Peacoat
and Kate Gompert, who's a pretty big deal to the novel, I think.
But I like the ETA stuff, I think, the most. I think it's the most straightforward. Yeah. I think it's the most like the kind of thing that I like to read. Like when we talked, you mentioned before, Art of Fielding or like the DeLillo stuff. Like it feels a lot like End Zone.
Yeah, Eschaton feels like it. Eschaton is almost like a straight End Zone thing about the like war games
motel room or whatever, right?
Kids. Yeah,
and it's fun, and it feels, even though there are strings of addiction narrative clearly throughout here, it doesn't feel as bleak as like the Enid House stuff, the recovery, the meetings, the A, the NA, all that stuff.
Right.
It feels like
fundamental to Hal's character is that he's addicted to marijuana. And also as addicted to the secrecy of getting high as he is to marijuana, which as we come to find through all of the there are a lot of narratives told at various anonymous groups in this. And these narratives are often about drugs, but they're also about like the other stuff, the reasons for wanting to get high, the reasons for like the hole being filled. And in Hal's case, like he loves the secret. He's as addicted to the secrecy as he is to the. Seems
like more so even maybe.
Yeah. And like maybe one of the reasons why he's having such a tough time at the end is that he's no longer has the secret thing to go do, as well as no longer.
You at some point asked, what was the question you asked? Why does he? couple weeks ago you asked me like, why do you think that why doesn't he speak in the beginning, or why doesn't he?
Well, what's going on with him in the beginning? Why? What do you think happens to him?
I don't know, but the narrative unfolds in a way that like what I interpret from it, maybe it's straightforward, maybe it's obvious, or maybe it's not. I don't know. Is that he is so paralyzed by not that he would get kicked out, but by the fact that like moms and CT would be like shamed that like their relative was this kid who like was a druggie or whatever.
The moms would be ashamed, not that he was a druggie, but that he was keeping a secret from her.
Right.
Which is partially why he is addicted to being secretive, because it's like he gets to withhold from this person that like is so engulfing of him and knows everything.
So after the Eschaton game goes, I don't want to say awry, but like
I think awry is
fine. And like he thinks that like they're going to get maybe expelled or suspended from that or whatever. It turns out that they're just going to be like drug tested, right? And so he tries to quit cold turkey.
Yeah. Well, they're getting drug tested. He's getting drug tested because he has to, but they're really drug testing so that they can kick Pamulus out.
But even though he sort of convinces them to give 30 days to whatever.
And how does he do that?
I don't remember.
He walks in on Avril and John Wayne in like sexual stuff and like makes it known that he will tell Hal.
Blow that up.
Yeah. Even though Hal already knows. And we learn at the end, like when Hal's going through it, he's like, the mom's has been in a sexual relationship with John Wayne since the beginning of last year. And also here are all the other people that she's had sex with.
You know, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
But so he's afraid of not, like, again, it's the kind of thing where it's like he doesn't care what happens to him, but he doesn't want to let down the people around him. And so, but seemingly there is kind of the, like, I was surprised when I reread the first chapter that he like not only somewhat keeps it together, I guess, even though he's not, but like he's together enough to at least win a match. Cause I talk about like how he won that morning and he's going to probably win the next day too. And just like, oh, cause it seemed like toward the end of his narrative, like literally throughout the book, that he's not gonna be able to even play tennis, let alone win a match.
Yeah. Cause it's not physically, it somehow translates that on tennis, he's still he's even improved. He's incredible on the court. It's just when he tries to make himself understood.
And what is that about?
Well, it's a great fear of his from the very beginning. And it's the fear of not being able to make himself understood. And also it's, James and Condenz's, has hallucinations that he's not communicating with Hal, that Hal's like mute and can't communicate with him, which is why he makes the entertainment. The entertainment being, I don't think we've even mentioned what it is so far. The entertainment being an attempt to communicate with his son. But he's trying to make he ends up making something that's so entertaining that it's lethal to anyone who views it. It becomes a thing that all you want to do is rewatch this thing over and over and over again. And we sort of, there's very little that we know of what is actually part of it, but we know that it includes the following things. This idea that you're always killed by a woman and your rebirth, the woman that killed you is always your mother in the next life.
Right.
And that within this film, you have Joelle naked, apologizing.
As death,
but also as, because she's the mother who kills and then it births them in the next life. So you have her apologizing over and over again to an infant. Which is the camera rigged up with a wobble vision thing, a lens that James made, because he's not only he's an avant-garde filmmaker, but he's more like an optics man. Like he crafts all his own lenses. He creates all this. He's technically very proficient, but very bad at narrative,
and also probably at editing too.
And probably at editing
maybe,
too. Yeah,
depending on who you ask.
So he has created this vision that mimics being a child. And that child being apologized to over and over again by the mother,
right?
Who is the Joelle Van Dyne, who is in the book, she's Madam Psychosis, which is a pun on the term metempsychosis. Metempsychosis being
laughing because I'm just like didn't get that either.
Yeah, metempsychosis is a complicated thing, but I think it's got something to do with like the psychological space between two worlds, being alive and dead.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to that. Come back to her in a second. But yes,
and she is apologizing over and over again to the baby, and it's like we go back to Freud and Oedipus and things like this, and this is what's thought of as being the most entertaining thing in the planet, because we all are. It's like a way to have someone forgive you preemptively, or not forgive you, but apologize preemptively to you. By like reminding you of your childhood, bringing you back to like these moments allows you to relive them. It's a very complicated thing.
Do you think, aside from this, which is clearly super successful, any of his other films are good? Because it seems like you kind of have to be a fan.
Yeah, no, they sound like horrible.
I do. So
I mean, there a lot of them are really, really funny concepts.
Yeah. Well, there's I love the one where it's like just the camera setup on the film critics or whoever.
Yeah, the joke.
Which is very good. Reading about his films, though, reminded me of one book you had me read that I did not like, and then one book that I read that retroactively I wish that we had done this season, but Flicker and Antkind.
Yeah, you didn't like Flicker, right?
I did not like Flicker. I mean, I grew to like it, but I just had a really tough time getting through that.
Yeah.
I probably like it more on the second. I would probably like most books more another time through. But I felt it reminded me of that, of like this like whole world of filmography that does not exist, will never exist, but like means so much to
so much of the filmography is the relation of audience to entertainment, right? You have the Medusa versus the Odalisque, in which the Medusa and the Odalisque are battling on stage, and the Medusa, they have like a hand mirror and a reflective shield. Do you remember this at all?
Yeah.
And so they're so slowly, like, as the audience is catching their reflections, the audience is slowly turning into, you have the cage, which is the one that is, people are invited onto one side to witness people doing incredibly humiliating things to themselves. And as they witness them doing incredibly humiliating things to themselves, their eyes grow bigger and bigger and bigger until they become one enormous eyeball.
I don't remember this.
And then on the other side, you learn that those people were invited in to humiliate themselves with the promise of being able to watch someone turn into an enormous eyeball.
I don't remember that.
That
rules though.
So it's all about like the audience's relationship to the text
to
itself.
the art. Yeah, okay.
And whether or not that art is humiliating, as like, you know, something like pornography might be, right? We have that incredibly moving thing at the end where James like is talking to Oren and he's saying like, if it were up to me, like, I don't want you to think that that's what sex is.
That's a beautiful conversation.
Yeah. And it's like, but it's the only beautiful conversation that you ever get from James. Right.
Right.
And Oren is not.
Well, because he's not really alive in much of the text. Like much of the text is like reflecting back to conversations or through the art. But it's like it's a very nice conversation.
And you have this idea of the audience being the audience can't talk back to the art. Right. And so you have like that sort of himself's relationship to Hal is like Hal is like this mute thing that he can't communicate with, the same way that as a filmmaker he can't communicate with the audience. The audience watches, but they can't talk back, and they often don't get it, and they can't like, and they're not relating on any emotional level, which is something that Hal like goes through all the time, like looking at his films going like, yeah, but like conceptually, like this guy's brilliant, but he can't like emotionally touch anyone in any real way. There's a distance, which also is like, you know, he's talking about postmodernism in general. Like Wallace is fighting back against this idea of postmodernism as something that keeps you at an arm's length, something that is always saying like this isn't my opinion, because like I don't, or like keeps you from ever giving an opinion on something, because to give an opinion on something would be like drippy and uncool. Right. Like you can always, if you maintain a sarcastic demeanor,
it's the rise of irony and
you
stuff,
can always dismiss anything that comes your way. Right. So like himself being incapable of communicating emotionally is like symbolic in a lot of ways. And in the same way that like, you know, Infinite Jest is in a lot of ways a postmodern novel, but in a lot of ways it's a reaction to postmodernism, because it's trying to get at things really seriously and really sincerely, right? There is a part in this book that is like fucking devastating to me, and it is the part that's like it's sort of like it's a Ducks Newburyport-ish part where he's talking about like the truths of living in the halfway house. And it goes
Gately is.
It's not even necessarily like any particular narrator. It's just going through, and some of it's funny. It's like you'll learn that like white penises and black penises are basically the same size, and that thought is like ends up being disappointing somehow. That you wanted the black penises to be bigger. That you'll learn that like people can smoke cigarettes in their sleep, but like towards the end, it says number one, it says sometimes you just have to sit in a place and hurt. You just have to hurt. You just have to like sit there and hurt. And then the other thing that it says is there is a thing as unagendered, raw, unalloyed kindness. And that exists in places that you would never expect for it to be. Sure. Like a halfway house or, you can't know where it's coming from because, some of the most beautiful, some of the beautiful things in this book come from people that if you pass them on the street, you would cross the street to get away from them. Right. Right. The book really leans hard on very grotesque things, very like people that have deformities and people that have personal backstories that are so immoral, amoral, brutal, cruel. And it asks you to care for these people by saying like, look, this is where they are in their lives, and they're accepting that they're powerless, and like in their lack of power, like you should look at them and you should see them as human beings who deserve whatever you can give them. Right,
like Gately especially, because he's like this behemoth of a man who seems to be described as like bigger than anyone and like ugly and hates himself and like has a very troubled past and like was a criminal and was a drug addict and everything, and then.
Has killed multiple people.
When push comes to shove, he will do whatever it takes to take care of the people around him, right? And then just the kindness of Joelle being just like kind to him is just like almost immeasurably. What is Hamlet about? What's the plot of Hamlet? I could have looked this up, but I didn't. Is it a family drama?
Kind of. So Hamlet is the prince.
Okay.
Hamlet's father is a ghost. He was killed by the guy by Hamlet's uncle, who now wants to marry Hamlet's mother.
Okay.
So
I'm seeing the parallels already.
Yeah, right. So himself is the ghost, right? CT is the
guy who wants to marry the
guy who's replacing him, and Avril is
the
mother.
So the whole book isn't Hamlet, but like the incandenza stuff is kind of...
for sure. Yeah. That's like
okay.
And ETA is kind of Elsinore Castle. Yeah. There's
gotcha. The other thing I want to say, and we can keep going through ETA or we can move on to whatever, is I love the idea of Madame Psychosis just as that kind of entertainer. I love, and the whole like after she leaves and them just basically holding vigil on like an empty microphone for an hour.
Yeah, I like how much WYYY is like WFMU.
Like I love, like it's the kind of thing where, like I think clearly radio still exists, even though like Sirius and stuff is like automating a lot of things and whatever. But like college radio still exists, like weird experimental stuff still exists. But when I see like, I didn't like it. I listened to a bunch. I stopped, after like a year or whatever. But like Welcome to Night Vale, that podcast feels like this kind of thing, like a weird, or like when I saw The Fog, like John Carpenter's The Fog, there's like the lady on the, like there's something old timey and modern about just like radio as a form of entertainment and like a weird thing that people are wrapped by, but like doesn't matter to most people, but the people who love it like it just.
Well, it's also, I mean, I think it taps directly back into this idea of an intimate connection that you can't respond to, right? Madame Psychosis speaks and really touches a lot. She's very touches Mario and Cadenza a lot, right? So much so that Mario can't sleep when she goes away, but they don't have a relationship, right?
Right.
Even though they secretly do. He doesn't know that he knows her, even though he does. But like, yeah, she's in people's ears, speaking directly to them, and is very comforting to people. She's being like an entertainment, quote unquote.
And it also feels so good for her that like the thing that distracts other people about her is removed.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So she's able to be herself in a way that she can't.
She's originally a performer in himself's films, where she is utilized for her beauty and for her, essentially being the prettiest girl of all time.
Yeah.
And now she has become an abstract, a bodiless voice that exists for people to embrace at an intellectual level rather than an endocrinal level, if that's even a word.
While we're on the topic, I want to talk about how, and we talked about this the other night when we were eating dinner, that the book makes Oren a punter.
Yeah.
The coolest fucking guy in the NFL.
I mean, this is like in some ways, I think this is a joke.
It has to be.
Unless it's that Wallace just didn't know anything about actual football.
But there's no way. It feels like
he's a punter that gets traded for a free safety and a first round pick, and it's just like that would never happen.
Or that like people are like wrapped in attention when they're like when like there's like heads of state or heads of country at a game, and they're like, I don't remember anything about the game except for those punts. And it's like, what? I'm
sure like if you went to college with Todd Sauerbrunn, that was probably how it was. You were probably just like, holy fuck, that guy, that punter. Like, let's like give him all the pussy, you know?
But it's also funny. I mean, like, I think part of me thinks that like Joelle would have had a relationship or like been open to anybody who's like brave enough to talk to her, because it seems like no one is even. She's not one drunk guy at a party or whatever, right?
She has a relation. The only relationship that she's ever had in her life is with the one guy that's brave enough to talk to her.
But she's like, I love this punter. It's like, come on, like, what are we doing? It's funny because like we were talking the other night, like. In a good offense, on a good team, a punter may never take the field. And there are like every year they're like, is this the year where people are going to go for it on fourth down no matter where? So like they're trying to eradicate this position where Wallace is like, this guy is the greatest, and like women will throw themselves at him, and they just like they know he's the punter. And it's like, what are we doing here, guy?
He's also, I think Oren is also a villain in the novel.
Are there? I mean,
Gately is, and Mario.
Okay,
Gately and Mario are the novel's two heroes.
So, like oh my god, why can't I think of his name? Prayer for Owen Meany. Owen Meany is like Mario, kind of, right?
A little bit. Although he is much more. Right. They both maintain a sort of purity, sincerity. Mario doesn't. Like one of the most moving and beautiful things about Mario is that Mario never even occurs to him that someone might be lying to him. Right. And like that's naive in a way that's dangerous, but it's also like beautiful in a way that is like admirable? Like almost can exist in this world, right? In a way that like he's in like he talks a lot about religion. Like Mario is a believer, right? And he like talks about how like when other people talk about God in the book, including how like they get kind of ashamed, they'll look away or they'll make a joke, but when they laugh at that joke, it's a mean kind of laugh. It's a laugh that doesn't have any actual mirth in it. It's like a laugh of derision, as though like it's laughing like who would be so silly as to believe in God. And Mario sees whatever that is. God, like he approached it in an honest way.
Yeah,
looking at it as something that, like, I guess has the potential for beauty.
Yeah.
And he's and that's why like he is a hero of the book, because he is a character completely devoid of irony. He doesn't have to put up any defenses. He accepts things as they are, and he accepts people as they are, right? Another, like, a fundamentally beautiful part of Mario is that at the end of the book, when you have that thing with Barry Loach talking about how he, like, his brother is going to drop out of the clergy if he can't get someone on the street to touch him.
Yep.
Like he's imitating a homeless man, and every day he stands there asking people to touch him, like, touch me,
and nobody does.
And nobody does for months. 9 months, I think, go by. And then Mario comes by, and Mario immediately is high-fiving like and he's like hugging them, because he doesn't have that filter, and that allows him to connect with all sorts of people, that would otherwise like not
and what I loved is that, he has he has birth defects and he's deformed, but like people just treat him like a normal person. Like, it seems like,
well, people love him because they feel unjudged. They feel like they can communicate with him, because also they know that because he lacks that cynicism, they know that he's not standing in judgment of them, and he's accepting them as they are. When they speak to him, he's not interpreting. He's taking their words in and again, in a way that is like, could be really bad, could be really dangerous.
Anything else we want to talk about with ETA? Because like there's the tennis stuff, but it's mostly like that's where the incandenza stuff is.
Yeah, well,
right?
ortho, right? Ortho is
Stace?
yeah, the darkness is plateau hopping, right? Meaning he's getting better and better. And he beats Hal, or comes very close to beating Hal, who Hal is the number 2 behind John Wayne.
No relation. And the only reason Stace doesn't is because he freezes, basically. He's like, I'm about to beat him. I'm not better than him. He doubt, fear.
Yeah. And he has been suffering through different psychic events in his room, his bed moving, different things getting stacked. And as objects keep getting moved around ETA. Do you have a take on any of this?
No. I mean,
okay.
I know that like eventually they switch rooms.
Yeah.
But no, I don't really have a take on it. I mean, I read it initially as like people pranking him, but I don't know if there's more to it than that.
Well, so think of it as himself being a wraith and how he can like confront Gately, but like why would he be making himself known to Ortho, and why would he be trying to defeat Hal in tennis?
Why would himself be trying to defeat Hal?
Yeah, like if he's because remember when the darkness is playing Hal, like the ball is moving in unnatural ways, right? And that's one of the reasons why he can beat Hal. And like my assumption here is that Hal's dad is moving the ball.
Is he doing it out of frustration, or why do you think that he's fucking with Hal?
Teaching him a lesson, maybe?
About what?
About not making tennis, not making winning a game the end of. I don't know. I mean, I think this is complicated and weird. I'm not 100% sure what the answer is. I'm sure that someone write in with a theory on that.
I do think like
Please.
what's cool about this is that it doesn't explicitly say like ghosts are real, but like ghosts kind of exist in this world, which is strange. I mean, there's the Gately stuff at the end. There's all sorts of like specters, spirits. It's also like moving presence, whatever.
I think like also you at the end you come to sort of accept that Lyle is a wraith himself. Lyle is only seen because he's like sitting completely perfectly still in the locker room at all times, right? So that's why he's there. But Lyle also enters the hospital room with Jim and is there licking the sweat off of Gately's head.
That's that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking weird, man. There's so much in here. Like I was remembering today as I was like, near the end of the book, I'm just like, what about that doctor who got murdered like 50 pages in?
The very first person.
Maybe he didn't get murdered. Was he watching Infinite Jest?
Yeah.
Okay, so that explains that.
He's the first victim
Okay.
of the cartridge in the book.
Asked and answered.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, that's weird that we never came back to him, but like we come back to him in other ways, right? Like
because they have to. Yeah, his wife comes home and she sees the thing, and then more people come in, and then the Jehovah's Witnesses come in because they saw the door was open, and then eventually they have to cut the power to the entire building.
It's like The Ring.
Yeah, kind of.
Anything else to talk about with ETA?
I don't think so. I have to. Sorry, this is. We have a timeline here. This is like the only show of the year that we've ever had a timeline for.
I mean, we could also just do more later.
I have to leave at 10.
Ended House. We got to talk about Ended House.
Yeah. What about it?
Well, I think that there's the two sides. Like, I don't have a lot to talk about like Ended House specifically, but I think that there's something interesting from an outsider's perspective because I've not been to these kind of meetings, but there's so much time spent in meetings, which I think is interesting. I also think it's kind of weird, and I was wondering if it was mean, maybe, where Hal accidentally, or not accidentally, but he goes to the wrong meeting.
Yeah.
And it's just because
it's like
someone gave
the
him
inner child meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
An old pamphlet that like is outdated, but there's still a meeting at the same place, whatever. And I'm like, it feels like voyeuristic in a way that like feels a little cruel, but also is kind of funny, but also is whatever. But I liked the crocodiles. Like he builds a world around, and like, even though I'm aware of this concept and these types of meetings from other forms of entertainment, from books, movies, whatever, I feel like you really get a sense of what it's like.
I think you also, like, maybe most crucially, I think you get a sense of how AA works, like, and how it not like how it functions, but how like it helps keep people from using drugs and alcohol.
I think what's really interesting and effective about that is that, as opposed to other texts about AA, where it's like you watch somebody go through the steps, like the steps are almost not mentioned. Like they're mentioned toward the end. There's like a thing, a guy like whatever, like there's like the 13th step, like, whatever, like talking about like things you don't do, but it's not like most people just like, it's just, you're in the meeting, like you're there, and it does seem like it works.
Yeah. I mean, and Gately uses it to, okay. So one of the reasons why Gately is a hero in this book is because he resists. At the end, he resists not only the use of drugs to help save him from the immense pain of being shot.
Even though there's a real fear that he's not going to be able to say no.
Yeah.
Until he grabs the Pakistani guy's balls.
Mm-hmm. And then also maybe that Gately is able to resist the entertainment. He's like the one person that can actually resist the entertainment, which is, sort of abstract. I don't know that it's written out specifically that he does witness the entertainment, but there is like this idea that he watches it in the room because he knows what Joelle is saying in the thing, the apologizing over and over again. It comes to him sort of as a dream, and you get the sense that maybe himself showed it to him or Steeply showed it to him in the thing. But he's able to resist because he has this training. He has the 12 steps, and he has this moment of complete revelation when he has a tube stuck down his throat, and when he's talking he's like wants to communicate this thing with Francis, which is that no single moment in itself is unendurable.
Right.
That you can get through one moment, and moving through that moment can get you to the next moment.
Powerful.
And all that life is a series of moments stacked on top of each other. And so no pain is unendurable because pain also exists moment to moment.
Right.
And if you can get past like pain in one moment, there's no reason why you can't continually get past each moment of pain. And this sort of unlocks something for him, unlocks something further in his sobriety for him that that he can endure, that this is something that he can do not only for the time being, but for the rest of his life.
Right.
These moments stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's something, and I think that's like the thing that makes him into a kind of hero in the book.
And so maybe he is, again, we don't know, maybe he's digging up the cartridge to destroy it once and for all, so because he knows that you don't need that, or like maybe he has altruistic, who knows, I don't know. Yeah,
or John Wayne is one of the AFR, and John Wayne has them there, like is forcing them to dig it up.
Should we talk about the AFR and Maraith?
Sure, yeah, go. And Steeply too.
Weird. It's weird. I don't know. Like it feels transphobic, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's something that is something also worth talking about with this book, is that the book treats the idea, because it does it with Poor Tony too, right? It treats this idea of a man identifying, or I mean, Steeply is not trans, but Steeply is cross-dressing, right? And it is treating the idea of like a man wearing women's clothes as fucking hilarious,
right?
Like as the funniest thing that could possibly happen, and it's like, this immense joke.
Because there's parts of this, again, not to go back to like what people think of this book or whatever, but there are things where I think you're able to write off uses of the N-word, of which there are many. And there are like, if there's certain characters where just like, that's how this character thinks.
Using like Oriental constantly.
Right. But then there are like, especially toward the end, as Gately is like getting high and higher and higher and higher, whatever. And he's like, there's like the trans people in the room. Like, it's just like everything he's describing is like, this feels kind of more like an overarching theme, or sort of like I think author's intent as opposed to the character.
Wallace is not kind to the trans characters in the book. Now, the trans characters in the book are also drug addicts who are going through pretty severe withdrawal during most parts of it. At the end, it's those same trans characters. I mean, still Poor Tony at the end in that room, but he is also like, I don't know. Gately's not being kind.
I mean, he's also high out of his mind, but it's still,
and he's been raised. He's been raised in a way where he's like, the only word he has for black people is the N-word, right? So it's like he's not gonna. Like he's there's a difference between that Gately and the empathetic Gately, or not in words, but in like action. I mean, it's still, you still, whatever.
I just think it's hard. It's,
it would not be a fun book to read as a trans person reading that and just being like, no, come on.
And I think it's like, or as a black person, it's just, there's stuff that would just, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. It just like, I wasn't offended by it. I'm just like this, it's whatever. like I feel like the Moraith and Steeply stuff, like you're thrown in relatively early, and they're talking about things. I'm just like, I don't even know where to begin understanding what they're talking about.
Well, they have a conversation that lasts hundreds and hundreds of pages where they're standing on a mountain for like 24 hours, having this very long conversation about the entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly expository, and it's mostly talking about the differences between America and Canada and the idea of discipline and how Americans don't have any discipline because Americans will choose the entertainment every time.
Even though they talk about the Canadian people who like were testing it, right, and all the Canadians like lined up around the corner. Was Canadians, right? Who like
yeah. He's with the pleasure.
Yes, yeah.
Which is the thing that I sent you. Yeah, they have this really long conversation about the differences between America and Canada. Because the book is in some ways about American addiction, right? The specifically American addiction entertainment, which probably is more global all the time, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what that's about. And then it's like, you know, there is this idea that Steeply is like, he has to dress up differently for each thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that he is like, he enjoys the humiliation of dressing up because previous to his dressing up like a woman, he had to dress up like a Rasta or something like that.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, it's this idea that like identity is like, he has to learn to do all these embarrassing things.
Because I think that there's something like on a broader level, not about like what those characters represent, but it's building into this global, like the stuff with Gentile and Tyne and the sort of...
I think it's just Gentle, Johnny Gentle.
Just Gentle?
Yeah.
There was I'm not gonna look it up, but there was a line where just like he was the first president to ever like swing a microphone around. And I'm just like, that rules. That's good.
First president to ever use boss as a verb.
Super cool. As a verb, adjective.
Adjective, yeah, sorry.
Come on. But no, I think that there's something that like, again, it does. You don't need to know it, but I liked seeing the sort of the onion unfold of like, how did we get to here? Because like before I started reading, you were describing like it's out of order. There's a thing called subsidized time. You're not going to know like when things happen. And I'm just like, the year of the depend adult undergarment. Like, how do we even get to this point? And it's like, well, we kind of learn.
Yeah, no, I think it does a good job of explaining.
And it's just like there's this world building that is, again, like I was saying before, so far removed from the action of the narrative, but also like informs a lot of things, the way that people think about things.
That certainly informs, like a lot of this novel is weirdly about Quebec separatism.
Which I know nothing about.
Yeah, which is like...
But is that how they speak French there as opposed to anywhere else in Canada?
Yeah. And like people in Quebec have been trying to... I don't know what it's like there now, but for a while it was very serious. People in Quebec were trying to like be their own country. There
was a very weird... I'm going to bleep the name out for his safety, but like when we started reading this book, when I started reading, you were rereading, we saw our friend do a Quebec accent on stage and just like... So like for like 100 pages, like whenever I was just like thinking of that, I was just like, oh boy, weird. Just like nothing to do with anything, but just like, I don't think about Quebec. And then like I hear that and it's all like here and just like, what is going on in this world?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's heightened. And it's kind of like the joke because like we don't think of Quebec as like the joke is that Canadians are so nice and we don't think of Quebec as like terrorists. Right. And like it's the, you know, it's playing on all sorts of like stereotypes and the scariest people are the people in wheelchairs. Right. It's playing on all of these things that is like, you don't, you know, things that you wouldn't think. It's ironic in that sense.
So they are following Oren.
Yeah. And also they pretend they claim that they're Swiss to Oren and to other people. They like when Marath is trying to get into Ennet House, he says I'm Swiss. And it's like you would think that people would recognize a Quebecois accent, but because Americans are so you
can just say dumb.
So self-involved. Yeah. Not interested
but
in other...
also to a certain extent, if somebody says I'm Swiss, you'd be like, you don't sound like, you gonna call him out on?
Yeah,
like it just...
I don't know. I would know. I mean, you know, you recognize what an accent is, but like, I don't know that you would necessarily call them out on it, but it's funny that
but you would make a note of it.
Yeah. It's funny that they're just like, oh, we're Swiss, even though they're Quebec. Like Oren's mother is Canadian, and he like doesn't he can't recognize this as a Quebecois accent.
It also feels like Oren is going through some shit in this novel. I mean, everybody is, but
yeah,
it just feels like...
Oren is using sex in the way that other people use drugs or fame, entertainment, right? He's trying to...
Although he is described as like the world's best lover.
But but he's doing to them what the moms is doing
Right,
to him.
smothering them with love.
Right? And he's not, like, he never orgasms because he wants to, like, be the best ever for all of them. But his wanting to be the best ever is actually evil in its own certain way, because it, like, he wants them to want to come back and and then he eventually can just reject them because he doesn't actually want a relationship. Right. And especially because Hal says he's like specifically interested in women that have small children.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
But, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like, because I know that she scrambled to read the book. I want to read Egg's email and see if that also inspires other conversation that we could have. Meg's reaction, if you want to email in, like before, what was the thing you put out a call for? Why did what? You asked people to write in theory about something. Doesn't matter. I'll make a note of it in the description.
Yeah.
Read the description. Lottery@cageclub.me. Meg's reaction to Infinite Jest. Also, once again, shout out Meg, got married. Shout out to the Egg. This is probably the closest I've come to not finishing a book for the pod. Unfortunately, given how long the book is, I don't have time to review my notes in any meaningful way. This is the second time I've read this book, and it was also due to Shred's request.
Yep.
The last time I read was 8 years ago. I
Holy
proposed that you do another episode of Infinite Jest in 8 years, but as a two-parter. The first is another pure Jest ep, and the second will be a review of your first episode about the book.
Interesting.
I mean, if Megan Boyle can do live blog every 10 years, we can read Jest every 8 years. I'm going to read it twice this year. One of the things I'm most interested in about this book is the role of author versus editor. There's not really an answer, but I feel like as I read the book, I was constantly wondering who the person was speaking, shout out Egg, on the same page, and if the person writing the footnotes was the same person writing the novel. See, we got the weird, like, don't focus on that. Other things are more important. Same kind of brain. And if there was more than one author per perspective. This is outside the plagiarism conversation, which I'm already assuming has already happened. I don't have time to contribute, but I want to acknowledge it. What's the plagiarism conversation?
So, you know...
I think you told me about this, but I don't remember.
Yeah, you're familiar with Thomas Harris and Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs?
Yes.
Okay. So here is from Red Dragon. The gun was a Bulldog 44 Special, short and ugly with its startling big bore. It had been extensively modified by Magnaport. The barrel was vented near the muzzle to help keep the muzzle down on recoil. The hammer was bobbed and it had a good set of fat grips. He suspected it was throated for a speed loader. That's from Red Dragon, page 137. This is from Infinite Jest. The item's some customized version of a US 44 Bulldog Special, blunt and ugly with a bore like the mouth of a cave. The piece has been modified, Gately can appraise. The barrel's been vented out near the muzzle to cut your Bulldog's infamous recoil. The hammer's bobbed, and the thing's got a fat Magnaport or clone grip like the Metro Finest Favor. It's not a semi-auto, but it's throated for a fucking speed loader.
That just tells me it's the same universe, baby, and Gately is Hannibal Lecter. But I'm sure that there's a lot of... Is there more than one instance, or is it just that?
Well, no. There's also... So this is the Bruce Green stuff.
We don't have enough time to go through all this, but there's more than one.
There's more than one, but that's the most egregious.
Not great.
Yeah, not great.
Part of the reason I believe there to be more than one person, quote unquote, writing is this passage. Quote, he'd admit it's like a dark vestige of his old, low self-esteem, suicidal thrill behaviors. He doesn't have a license. It's not his car. It's a priceless art object car. It's his boss's car, who he owes his life to and sort of maybe loves. He's on a vegetable run for shattered husks of newcomers just out of detox, whose eyes are rolling around in their heads. Has anybody mentioned Gately's head is square? It's almost perfectly square. Massive and boxy and mysteriously sick, blunt. The head of somebody who looks like he likes to lower his head and charge. Meg says, in the middle of the paragraph, there's a question posed to possibly someone other than the reader. Specifically, it says anybody rather than I, which feels like it can indicate multiple inner narrators.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are probably a dozen narrators. You have first person from James's father. You have first person from Hal. You have first person from whoever's narrating the Wardine section. You have Pemulus narrating the footnote directly. You have, there's all sorts of different narrators, and there's the abstract us at the end that I already mentioned. You have all of these different voices are contributing to like this like very broad, wide experience. I don't think that there's I don't think necessarily that there's an answer other than that. Yes, you have a ton of different narrators in here.
Also, probably like I think what I've talked about with like Curtis White and stuff, where it's just like it allows you the ability to write in different ways and just like keep
that's
yourself from
definitely
getting
what he's
bored,
doing.
probably,
That's,
right?
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
I think a lot about, this is Egg again, about the role of editor in general. I did my master's thesis on Emily Dickinson, brag. I graduated after I read this book the first time, and I feel like I got more out of this read having that background. Long story short, Taylor Swift reference, my thesis was essentially that there is a layer of meaning that gets lost when you read Emily Dickinson's poetry through printed text rather than her handwritten work. In addition, Emily Dickinson's poetry was published after she died, and the person who worked to get her poetry published did so with a heavy editorial hand, adding periods and commas, removing dashes, and completely getting rid of some complete stanzas. I digress. Avril, as editor, also highlights how she is abusive in a way that seems, at first glance, nice and normal. Also, Emily Dickinson related, I felt like some of the capitalized words that were used in the Gately sections, identify, out there, etc., were doing the same literary quote-unquote work as when Emily Dickinson uses capitalizations in her poetry. I'm czar, I'm quote woman now, woman capitalized, and czar capitalized. My argument being that capitalization is used as a kind of synecdoche to capture a boatload of meaning into a single word. I also think that there's probably just like, I think that's maybe like an AA thing, like it just...
Yeah. I'm going to have to, I got to parse that use of synecdoche and what she means by that, but keep going.
One of the scenes that broke my heart was when Pemulus was trying to tell Hal privately he got expelled. And it was interesting because that whole scene took place in an endnote. So if you, for whatever reason, didn't read the endnotes, like we talked about before, you didn't get that gut punch.
Yeah, he says like, no kidding, Hal, we really have to interface here. And Hal's hurt because Pemulus has like avoided him for the last couple of days because he was trying to figure out that stuff on his own. I will say also, you in a footnote is I remember I said that Pemulus I thought of as a villain in the text. The reason why Pemulus is a villain in the text is because he is one of the few people that tries to get Hal to not quit drugs, right? And he says you can't do it. If you need something and you stop doing it, something in you will die and you'll become a psychic husk out there. And don't quit. You can quit this if you want. I'm not telling you whatever, but I'm saying you need drugs. He's like the anti-AA. He's doing as much psychic damage as he possibly can on the way in and out. But I think that that's incredibly sad because Pemulus is also, he's a loyal friend and he's trying to help Hal and he's trying to.
There is some like kind of positive things that the don't quit, like things are going well. It's tough. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's very, yeah.
I did not listen to the audiobook for this one, Egg says. I didn't know that there was an audiobook.
Yeah, there is, but it doesn't have the fucking footnotes in it.
Ugh. I'm glad I didn't because there's definitely a visual quality that gets missed or would be different when you read aloud, such as the capitalization that I mentioned above, but the little things like the use of PM when talking about the afternoon. I don't know about you two, but I didn't read that in my head as PM. I don't even know if I read that as a word at all, so much as just understood it.
Mm-hmm. No, beautiful. I'm feeling you 100% on that.
And that to completely change tax, I think there's a lyrical quality to some of the work that gets missed if you don't read it aloud. I don't think I made the Kennedy-Ken erdely connection the last time that feels so obvious now. Comprise is used correctly more than once in this book, something that is very rare. I see that word used a lot while copy editing. This doesn't seem to be at the book. I mean, it's about the book, but it's just like, this guy knows his punctuation.
No, yeah, Wallace is like a grammar guy.
I see that word used a lot. Well, that's also just like toward the end of the book, I'm just like, you're misspelling shit, but like that's clearly by design.
Yeah, right. Especially in the Randy Lenz section.
When he talks about how there was the guy, I don't remember his name, but the guy that, the only real actor that James used in his things. Wolcott maybe or something? It's something like that.
The guy that does the... Yeah.
But he's like, it's like how De Niro was for Scorsese and McLaughlin for Lynch. I'm like, these are cool people. Like, but he spells McLaughlin wrong. I'm just like, but like, it's maybe by design or maybe it's not. I don't know. But I'm just like,
I'm pretty sure it is.
Probably. Anyway.
Although I will say, notoriously, a lot of the math in this book is fucking wrong, which is like funny. And he didn't fuck up the math on purpose. Like he responded to letters telling him that the math was fucked up with a my bad.
I see that word used a lot while copy editing about comprise. It's not something to use interchangeably with compose, but I also think it's one of those words where the definition will change because so many people use it incorrectly, like factoid. I'm leaving a list of things I don't have time to discuss that I think you probably mentioned. Gately as Christ figure. Kind of covered that.
Okay, yeah.
Cartridge reminded me of Snow Crash. Okay. I'm positing that drugs make you immune to the cartridge. I think there's a conversation between Steeply and Moraith where they say that it's normal people getting addicted, but I don't have time to search for it. Accents are so, all capital letters, spot on. It's something I didn't notice before I lived here. Well, there are things where they describe him just like, yeah, that's Boston. That's Boston.
I mean, I talked to Meg about Boston a lot, and she was like, it is very like, this book is so like nails the Boston geography and all of the like,
good,
like down to like real stores.
Did he live there or no?
Like, yeah, he went to Amherst.
All right, okay. All in all, Meg wraps up. I'm glad Shreds made me read this book 8 years ago and also this year, and I look forward to reading it again in 2031.
God. Yeah, we should talk about Randy Lenz a little bit, which is another Thomas Harris
oh, really?
ripoff, which is that there's just not a rip, but there's a character the same way that there's a character that speaks into his fist in End Zone, like Trolsch does. There's a character in Red Dragon that you can tell he's a knife owner because he's got a bald patch on his arm from like testing the sharpness of his knife, which you know from Randy Lenz. Randy Lenz also is a user of Madam Psychosis, is a user of DMZ, and that's why he's as weird as he is, with the North always having to be in the northernmost section of the car.
Always going north.
There's
some stuff like that. This book gets dark in a lot of ways, but him killing cats and dogs, I'm just like, this is some fucked up. Like, it's like that's also the point, like in American Psycho, which is about a guy murdering people, where like he kills that dog, you're like, too far.
Yeah.
Right?
And so you have that with Lenz, and then you also have, for example, Jeffrey, when Struck is plagiarizing. When you get most of the info dump about the AFR, it's Jim Struck, who's an ETA student, plagiarizing Jeffrey Day, who is an Ennet House resident. And that happens right after Jeffrey Day is in Ennet House and Morath is in Ennet House pretending to be Swiss, and you get the sense that like Jeffrey Day recognizes Morath as a AFR guy.
Gotcha.
So there's like there's so many, like there's such a lattice of things going on here. But I also want to say I think that what happens with Hal is that I think he's dosed with DMZ, and that's why he's
so like closed off internally, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll call Matt, see if he answers.
Okay.
If not, we have 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Can you hear this? Hello, you are on the air with How to Win the Lottery, a book club podcast. How are you, Mr. Honorable Judge Matt Erdely?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. How are you guys?
Good. We are on a little bit of a time crunch because Shreds has to get home, but we sent you 4 covers.
Shreds,
Wait,
don't worry. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. I mean, you'll get there eventually.
I have to remain anonymous for various reasons, so we decided on the.
There's a whole narrative. It's a whole lore.
Don't worry about it.
I will leave
Is
it out.
this some David Foster Wallace thing?
No, it's been going on for like a year.
No, it's
good. You'll get to it if you listen to the podcast. Anyway, we sent you 4 covers.
Oh, I have to listen to this podcast.
I'll tell you in person. Don't worry about it.
We'll just text you. It's fine. But we sent you, because I sent you a book cover, and then my co-host was like, "Oh, I didn't think you were gonna send that one." So we wound up sending you 4 different book covers. And I think you said for something that is, you described it in a way like for something that's overstuffed, we might as well do all 4 covers.
All I know about this book is that it's really long.
Have you ever tried starting it or no?
I have. Yeah, I think I got like 20 pages in and then just got distracted or something, moved on.
So
that's how I read most books.
It's pretty good. I mean, you said today that you read 1 page of one book, and that was pretty good.
Like, just preserve the mystery.
What book was that?
Author fuck it all up.
What book? What book did you read 1 page of?
It was actually a graphic novel about. So might want to count it in panels. I read 6 panels.
Was it like a Calvin and Hobbes? Was it?
Oh no, I can churn through Calvin and Hobbes.
He read 1 Garfield.
Was it one of those? Was it one of those new Nancy comic strips?
I read 3 speech bubbles. Nah.
Anyway, we sent you 4 different covers. We sent the original one. We sent the original hardback, the original paperback, the new one with the clouds, and then a fan cover.
Yeah, which is the newest edition.
That's like an official cover that they put on. Mm-hmm. Is there one of the 4, knowing maybe, do you know at all, like, I know you read the 20 pages, but do you know like what this book is about?
No idea.
What do you think the book is about based on the covers? Because there's 3 clouds and then one with like an eye on a TV.
Yeah, that eye in the TV really throws me off. I don't know. It's hard to separate the idea that this is like this mammoth achievement in a huge, long book with what I'm looking at and the title. Because, Infinite Sky just seems vast and...
Well, do you know what
unwieldy.
Infinite Jest is from? Do you know that Infinite Jest is from Hamlet? Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him.
He was a man of infinite jest.
He was a man of infinite jest.
No.
Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him. Horatio, he was a man of infinite jest. Okay, so that's like part of it. That it's a reference. It's a direct reference to Hamlet, which the book sort of maps some of its plot on. I can literally hear crickets.
I love it. It's so nice.
This is the verse. This is the segment that I'm gonna just seem the dumbest.
I can literally like it's not even crickets. It's the turning of a wheel, and there's like a mouse running in your head.
But no, you know what it is? It's like it's imagine the background of these covers, and it's just the sound of like wind gently blowing.
Well, the point of this segment is for you as a graphic designer to judge the book by its cover. You're not supposed to know the book.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is that, like you said, all 3 of the 4 have blue sky and clouds, which, like, what's more generic than that? That's a desktop background, and all 3 of these designers are choosing to use that as the only image on the thing. Yeah,
it's a real Windows 95.
Yeah. I mean, so the first option has a very 90s type treatment with the all lowercase and the sans serif and the multiple colors, and it looks very 90s.
That's got to be by design though, right? Because like the book is about so much, and also like you can't just put like, I mean, you can put a tennis racket on the cover, but like, do you know why they chose clouds or no? No.
Well, it seems to... Yeah, go ahead.
I have no idea. Like I said, it feels like endlessly vast.
Okay.
And again, that's probably just my take on it because I know that the book is also vast.
Well, also,
I think, Joey, what did you say? What did you say? It ruined
my last 6 weeks. Yeah. But I also think like if you're in a bookstore and you see the cover, you also see that the book is 1,000 pages long. Like it's not like
exactly
right.
Right. It's like as thick as it is wide.
There is something.
Like a cube.
There's also something like about like serenity, right? Looking at a blue sky with clouds floating through it.
I guess, but that's cut by the word jest. It's like, coax you into feeling that serenity, but you're a fool for doing that.
Would it change your opinion at all if the original title was Infinite Jest, a failed entertainment?
Well, yeah. I mean, you see the word jest, and it feels like this guy knows something. You're going to learn something about, I don't know, life here.
If you didn't know the cloud stuff and you just saw the TV with the eye, would you like it more or less?
No, I don't really like that cover.
It does. It looks a little bit like Keith Haring, right? Like, or at least like an approximation of a Keith Haring thing.
Yeah, kind of. It looks very soft. I'm not intrigued by that cover at all.
This is what happens when you get fans to design the covers.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it doesn't do much. A little icon. It kind of reminds me of the Eats, Shoots, and Leaves cover. It's the same type treatment as that.
What is that?
It's a grammar book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe because I just saw it on my bookshelf, and that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going through these real quick. I mean, my favorite is the one with the yellow type. You've got the perspective on the type. It leans into the massive quality of it.
Yeah. That's the third edition.
It feels very cinematic.
feels like which is thematic as well.
I had a real existential crisis at the used bookstore where I bought this because they had that one and they had the one that I bought, which is the original cover that I sent you. And I was just like, I don't know which one to buy.
Yeah.
And I wound up getting the earlier one, but like, I think the newer one, I think the one that you like, Matt, is probably the most well-known.
That's the one that I read the first 3 words of. Yeah.
Sweet. Oh, we went from 20 pages to 3 words.
Read the cover.
Infinite Jest, David, and you stopped.
Yeah. And then is that last one the soft cover where his name is all huge?
Yeah, I think that, there's an interesting thing with books, which is like, you'll see with like Stephen King and James Patterson, and like as an author gets more famous,
right,
like their name gets bigger and the title of the book gets smaller as like the personality like overtakes the work itself.
Well, like we also talked about this earlier, that like he is so well known in certain circles, and then outside of that, he's not. Like it's this weird where like this is an accomplishment, a feat to people who know this, but so much of like so many people I talked to in the last like while I've been reading this book have no idea what this book is. Like it's so like,
is this like a cult? Like, would you call it like a cult classic?
Yeah, I'd say it's a cult classic.
It has a reputation more so than most other books that we've covered.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can't think of any other book that like has a connotation of like it's an achievement to read this book, right?
Mm-hmm. And then also it's like now, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's like now this book is associated with this sort of toxic kind of dude that like sort of bullies women into like
he's gross on and off the field, basically.
Yeah, guys trying to like just be like, hey, read this book, it'll make you smarter, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So has that sullied your reading of it?
No, I don't give a fuck about that stuff. It's like you can't like the artist can't control how the audience reacts to things and how people, there's so much good art that is like has a shitty audience, like
the Joker,
the band Tool, right? Tool has a terrible audience, but they put out that classic album Fear Inoculum.
Does anybody take Tool in our thing?
Or is it more of a Pussifer guy myself?
Oh yeah, me too. I love Pussifer.
Matt, do you have any final thoughts? Sorry to chase you, but we got my co-host, again unnamed, has to leave. Do you have any final thoughts on any of these 4 covers or the book in total?
No, not really. But congratulations on reading it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Our next book, if you're around next weekend, probably is going to be one that you might have read, and there's a bunch. Is
it Endurance, the tale of Ernest Shackleton's failed expedition to the South Pole?
You know what? I'll read that if you'll come on. We'll do an entire bonus episode
Does that
of
take
just
place
that.
in a state?
No, it's
no.
The
ocean?
Arctic, yeah.
So
Antarctica.
When we get to the countries, cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh well, if you do a continent series, then yeah, that should be your Antarctic entry.
I'll do that book if you'll come on to talk about it.
Oh hell yeah, I'll talk about it. It's got pictures in it.
All right. As long as it's not a one of those picture books that you run away from after 3 or 4 panels.
Yeah, no, sign me up. I'm down for that one.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Matt.
All right.
Also, Matt, I'm sorry that I said equally as funny as you today.
Well, are you going to listen to Prefab on the drive home?
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Call it Water Under the Bridge then.
All right.
Cool. Have a good night. Bye.
Later, guys.
Later.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to say about?
I feel like there's
Jest?
a lot more to talk about with this book.
Should we do another episode?
Nah, I don't think so. I think we got to keep moving.
Is there anything that you would like on your way home be bummed that we didn't talk about? Because I feel like there's other things.
I'll tell you what. If I do, I'll make a voice note of it and send it to you, and you can tack it on the end.
I am thrilled to be done with this. I'm excited to reread it. I'm excited to also read for this show much easier books.
Yeah. Oh, can I tell like a very short story that has nothing to do with the book?
I got nothing but time.
Yeah. So I have a neighbor that has bicycles. Like he always has Like there's just like increasing number of bicycles on his lawn.
Okay.
All the time.
Okay.
Like I've watched it over the years, over summer. Like he sits out on his front lawn all day, just like with these multiple bicycles increasing exponentially. It feels insane. It feels illegal. It feels all these things. So today's crime is thieving bicycles.
Sweet.
Betting Taylor Swift every night inside the Oculus Rift. After Mr. and the Mrs. finish dinner and the dishes.